Yep. Hi, Steve.
Steve, okay. Good evening, and welcome to the Town of Rockland Select Board meeting for Tuesday, August 11th, 2026. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief Zilli, can you start us off?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I ask that everybody remain standing for just a second? Last week, our community suffered an awful tragedy, and I'd just like to take a moment of silence for those that passed, Sebastian Hamilton and Rosie Loftus, and continue to hold Keyshawn, Darian, and Chloe in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at youtube.com/WRPS Rockland. Please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. First on the agenda, community announcements. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. I have a brief statement to read from the Joint Waterworks on the current water emergency, so I'm just going to read it. The Mass Department of Environmental Protection has issued a water supply emergency declaration for the Abington and Rockland Joint Waterworks water system. Reservoirs are critically low. Mandatory water use restrictions are in place. Please help to conserve water by shutting off all irrigation systems and abiding by the Level 4 water use restriction. Please go to arjww.org for more information or call the Joint Waterworks at 781-878-0901. We thank everyone for their cooperation.
Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, I have meeting minutes from 7/14/26. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Yep.
I assume Steve frozen? Okay.
He's drinking.
All right. Steve, you were frozen. Were you in support?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So next on the agenda, under new business, South Shore Recycling Cooperative, appointments, 3-year terms. We have listed Health Agent Chris Schultz and Highway Superintendent Dave Taylor. Doug, any
Thanks,
comments?
Mike. Yeah, I did not ask either of them to come. You all know them very well. I put a little bit of information in your packet on what the South Shore Recycling Cooperative does. Again, we're allowed 2 members. I've learned that it's actually not a full member and an associate. We're allowed 2 full members, and it makes a lot of sense to continue to have the health agent and the highway superintendent representing the town. Interestingly, there is some discussion among the cooperative at a new initiative to change the current regional pop-up household recycling events that happen in different locations periodically, and they're considering actually building a permanent location at one of our neighboring towns. So that's just sort of an interesting project that's currently being discussed. But with that, I recommend you appoint them both for 3-year terms.
I'll entertain a motion to appoint.
Yep, motion to appoint.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Yep.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Next on the agenda, 1-day liquor license request. I assume this is the rec department. Olivia, come on up. Come on over, Doug.
Hi, everyone.
Olivia,
Olivia,
welcome.
how are you?
First, I want to say thanks to our friends with the game on Friday night. We had softball, fire versus police.
I am surprised
Nice
they're showing their
try,
faces.
It was excellent.
I'm surprised
I
they
know.
show up in public losing like that.
It was
Yeah.
awesome. It was a really great game. We had a lot of fun, great turnout, and it's just nice to have the community out and to see these guys
Mhm.
doing their thing and, you know, not behind the badge. And they're regular people. So that was really fun. So I'm here because next Friday, the 21st, we are having Tipsy Tie-Dye at the community center. So it's an opportunity for people to come out, tie-dye. We've got games, music, and we're asking players to serve, and Red Sox on in the blue room. So, yeah. So we'll get going.
Anybody have any questions or comments, concerns?
No?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Yep. Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Olivia.
That was easy.
All right, next on the agenda, what I assume everybody is here for, license plate reader technology request, Police Chief Nicholas Zioli. Before we go to Chief Zioli, I'm going to just go to Doug Glapp real quick.
Thanks, Mike. And Chief, if you want to come up and join me, that would work. So I just wanted to give a brief introduction. The police chief has requested and recommended that the town pursue license plate technology, and I'll turn it over to him in a moment to explain more why. But understanding what this technology is and seeing how it's been rolled out in other communities, both within our region and across the country, and sometimes rolled out pretty ineffectively, we both feel very strongly that this really is a policy decision that should be approved by the board prior to its implementation. So it's on the agenda tonight, and after hearing the different presentations, having a question and answer period, receiving any public input if there is any, and if you decide to authorize the police department to use this technology, we do have a suggested motion that was prepared by town council that you could use or not. Alternatively, you could vote to delegate this decision to the chief and me for us to decide if you wanted to do that. If for whatever reason you collectively as a body decide that you do not want us to use this technology, then you could vote to direct us not to pursue it, or you could simply take no action at all. But we are requesting direction from the board, and we won't implement this technology without your direction. So I wanted to be clear about that. With that, I'll turn it over to the chief to explain a little bit more about why he's recommending we do this.
Great. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the board for allowing us the opportunity to be here tonight. We're here to present a proposal from the police department for the installation of license plate readers in our town, with our recommended vendor being Flock Safety Systems. Before I start, I just wanted to thank everybody in the room for being here tonight. I firmly believe that the success of any law enforcement agency is about the buy-in and trust from the community. And the fact that you're all here tonight means a lot. My ears are open. This is about taking input from the community and making a good decision. So as we go through this all tonight, I want you to understand that, if you ask anybody down the police station about me, I'm not someone that just bangs the desk and says it's going to be my way. I take input from people, I value what people say, and we make our decisions based on that. I also feel the community should have input on how they want to be policed, all right? And this process tonight reflects just that. So I have with me tonight Deputy Chief Stephen Stummers. I also have two representatives from Flock Safety Systems, Kristen Donahue, and also Phil Arnold up there on the board. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, is give a brief overview of the program, talk a little bit about how this program would benefit our community, what it does, what it doesn't do, and then address some of the common concerns that I have heard voiced. I would like to then turn it over to the rep from Flock so they can make a couple of statements and share some information, and then of course answer any questions that people have.
So very quickly before you do that, Chief, just for the members in the audience, the way that this is kind of going to work is the chief is going to make his comments. He's going to turn it over to the representatives from Flock. They're going to give their presentation. It's going to come back to the chief, and then it's going to come back to the members of the select board to ask their questions. And then there will be ample opportunity for anybody here that wants to speak to ask their questions of the chief or representatives of Flock. My preference would obviously be that residents of the town speak first. So if there's somebody that's not a resident, you're welcome to speak, but please allow the residents in the room to speak first. And with that,
Yep.
Chief Zioli.
Great, thank you. So the LPR, or license plate reader, is a stationary camera that automatically captures images of license plates on vehicles traveling on public roadways. It then compares that data to vehicles associated with crimes or active law enforcement investigations, and some of the more prevalent applications would be stolen motor vehicles, fatal hit-and-run crashes, burglaries, and missing persons, such as Amber Alerts, Silver Alerts, and things of that nature. I could spend a lot of time talking about or going over some of the successes that police departments have had with these programs. Things ranging from identifying shooting suspects to locating those with dementia. What it doesn't do, it doesn't use facial recognition or use live feed video. These are one-time images that investigators can access after a crime is committed. So if something was to happen, Then we would access the cameras and see if we could get a lead based on what we can get from the camera. I don't want people to think that there's an officer sitting in an office someplace just watching TV all the time, watching video. That's not the case. They don't track speed, and they're not used to issue moving citations. So it's not like, these cameras are going to issue citations based on your speed and things like that. These are some of the things I've heard. They also don't record conversations. This technology allows investigators to quickly identify leads that would otherwise take hours or days to develop. Now, by the way, they're not the end of all crime, okay? They don't replace police officers. However, they will provide a force multiplier for our department. I mean, there are some times where we may have 3 officers on the road, and if we have a big crash up on Hingham Street, they're all going in that direction. So having that backup in the community to help us while we're not there will be a bonus. Using these systems, regional cooperation is greatly enhanced. Just about every town around us has these systems and has had tremendous success with them. Working together, we can connect investigations across neighboring towns. You all know that criminals don't respect borders, right? They travel from one side to the other. And something to consider is that we reach out to our neighboring agencies all the time for crimes. We reach out to get help from our cases that happen in Rockland. And it only makes sense to me that we would invest in that same technology, not solely to help them, but to help ourselves, okay? And also, too, let's face it, we don't want to be, if we're in a situation where we're the one town that doesn't have these systems in place, could that pose a vulnerability for us? And that's something to think about, just to consider. At the same time, our department recognizes and respects that residents have legitimate privacy concerns. Like everything we do, our offices and actions are governed by policy, and I kept a draft in your packet which outlines a draft policy for us and procedures and rules and regulations. Our officers, we have great officers working for us, and they're bestowed a lot of responsibility. They carry firearms. They use force in some instances, mace and tasers. They drive cruisers and respond to calls at high rates of speed. They make arrests. They charge crimes with people. So there's a lot of responsibility our officers are given. So we live in the world of policy, procedure, rules, and regulations all the time, just to keep that in check, okay? This is just another tool for us to use, but it will be governed by the same rules and regulations that we follow now. There's a lot of liability in what our officers do, and I think about that all the time as chief. What I don't want to do is incur any more liability for our town. So I worry about things like that, so we try very hard to keep our policies and procedures up to date and in line with best practices in law enforcement. Our officers, okay, so all entries in the system are logged and subject to audit, and searches will only be for legitimate and approved law enforcement purposes. Officers confirm information from Flock with other standard LE databases as part of the policy. So for an example, if you get a stolen car and it's in the system as a Flock and you get a hit, we're not just going to act directly on that information. We're going to confirm that with our onboard MDT terminal, so we have confirmation of that. So that's in our policy, and that's part of our procedure. So there's no mistakes. We want to mitigate mistakes. The data is deleted after 30 days, and our department will be implementing a transparency portal. It's a sample of which is in your packet. And really, what this is, it's a real-time document that the citizens can go on and see how this program is advancing. It gives information about usage and searches, and also talks about success stories we've had. So, and that's something we're going to incorporate, and I think it will be a great way to give feedback to the community about the program. So at this point, I'm going to stop, and I'd like to turn it over to Phil Arnold from Flock so we can mention a few things, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. Members of the board, thank you for having us. My name is Phil Arnold. I am a public relations manager, public affairs manager for Flock Safety. I'm new to Flock Safety, and I'll give you a little background. I retired July 17th after 40 years as a law enforcement officer in Illinois, 27 of those 40 years as a chief of police. And I became very involved with Flock because we use the technology. I became a customer back in 2017. We were one of the first ones in Illinois to use it, and had great successes with crimes from child abduction to missing persons to shootings, homicide, homicide cases with this technology. So when I saw some of the misinformation that was out there, I felt very strong about it and decided I would come and do this. My colleague, Kristen Dunn, he was on the call as well. She is the
local account executive that has been working with your police department to get an idea of what type of technology you would need and where they should go. And I thank you all for letting us come today. I also want to commend the board for doing your due diligence and letting us talk about this technology, and also the chief for his transparency, because that's very important to us at Flock, being transparent. You've seen cases in the news recently about officers misusing the Flock system. I'm sure that's some of the questions that will come tonight, so we'll get ahead of that right away. It's true, there have been officers misusing the system. What's different about our system and others is that we actually have these audit tools in place to keep these officers accountable, and the tools for the chief to use to see if the system is being misused. Other companies that deploy this technology don't have those guardrails in place, so we're very proud of that. We know it's important to the public. We want our officers being held accountable. I think we should probably start with the presentation. Kristen, can you do that? Okay.
Yes.
So the first slide is up. You've probably seen these around your area. I know that you don't have them yet in town, but the other surrounding towns do. This is what our license plate readers look like, our NAC license plate reader, ALPR. That has a large solar panel on it with a battery backup. Usually they sit up in the air, 10, 12, 14 feet high, depending on where they're placed. They're great tools for police to use for investigations. The chief had mentioned that it's a force multiplier because it provides us with a way to really be precise on what we're looking for, the vehicles that we're looking for. It lets us do our job faster. For instance, in the old days, we might have a victim that said, oh, the vehicle that hit my car was a white SUV. So police would then fan out and they would stop every white SUV that was driving down the street to see if that was the offending vehicle. With this technology, officers can use that, whittle down the time, and get more information, including possibly a license plate or other identifiers off the vehicle. So it allows them to stop inconveniencing so many people in the community by stopping every white SUV, there's several, and pinpoint one vehicle that they're looking for and put that out to other agencies as well. Go to the next slide, please. So this is some things that we wanted to get out right away. There's so much misinformation out there. We want you to know what we do and what we don't do. So what the technology does, it does take a point-in-time picture of a vehicle, photograph of the back of the vehicle and the license plate. That's all it captures. You cannot see inside the compartment of the vehicle. It doesn't see who's driving the vehicle. Again, we don't deploy facial recognition on any of our cameras. We don't do it now. We don't have no plans on doing it. It just takes that static photograph from a fixed camera. It does capture the make, model, the license plate of your vehicle, which helps identify the vehicles for investigations. Again, where somebody may have said, oh, it was a red Chevy that hit my vehicle or that stole my purse, we can now pinpoint that to a certain type of vehicle to do a search in the system and find that vehicle and then ascertain a license plate and other information that would help us do the investigation. It only supports criminal investigations. So in other words, you will see this a few slides up. When an officer wants to check for a vehicle or do a check in the Flock system, he has to sign to the system, he has to sign a waiver that he is going to use the system properly. There's two-factor authentication, and then when he tries to run a license plate or enter information to look for a vehicle, there's a mandatory drop-down box that he has to put in the reason for his search. It's a criminal reason. There's a permanent record of those searches that are done so that they can be audited later to make sure that officers are using the system properly. So they can't just type in a reason. They have to drop-down box. Again, that's audited, so the chief can go back or whoever his administrator is in the system to go back and make sure they're doing the searches properly. What we don't do, I mentioned earlier, we do not use facial recognition. None of our cameras, whether they're just the ALPR cameras, drone cameras, the point-field zoom live cameras, do not use facial recognition. We have nothing in our business plans to ever start using facial recognition. It's not in the plans at all. do not allow us to search for people, pets, or clothing. So you may have seen this on the internet, a lot of stuff going around. ALPR cameras only allow us to search for vehicle types, license plates, colors, anything that might be stand out of the vehicle. For instance, if it is a pickup truck with a toolbox in the back, but we can enter that in the search criteria. But we cannot search for people. It won't let us look for pets. We can't put clothing down on what a person might be wearing because it only is taking a picture. It only searches the vehicle type, license plate. The information that the officer received is not connected to any of the Department of Motor Vehicle systems, doesn't contain any information about the owner of the vehicle, who's driving the vehicle. That is all something that your officers have to do separately in their state system. So if they do have a vehicle come up on a hot list that maybe it's a stolen vehicle that is traveling through your town, they then have to go to their state system, put that into their computer, run it. That will then give them the information of who owns the vehicle, whether or not it is stolen. They have to verify that it's stolen. But none of that information comes up with the flock hit. The flock hit is strictly photograph of the vehicle and the license plate, and if it is on a hot list, what it may be wanted for. They do not generate traffic enforcement tickets, and they do not track vehicles continuously. And I'll make an example of that. So people think that the technology tracks you. It does not track you. For instance, if you leave in the morning to drop your child off at school, and as you leave your neighborhood, maybe you pass a flock camera that takes a photograph of the back of your license plate in the back of your car. And you go and you drop your child off at school, and you go to the gym and work out, and then maybe you go for a cup of coffee, and then you go shopping, and then you go have lunch with a friend, and then you go back to pick up your child at school, and on the way home, your vehicle passes that camera again. Yes, it'll tell the officer if he is looking for your specific vehicle and he has entered a specific reason, a criminal reason to look for your vehicle, it will tell him what time you passed that camera. But it doesn't know any place else that you've gone. It is not tracking you to all the other places, the school, the gym, the coffee shop, the shopping centers. It has no idea where you've been. It only takes a photograph that moment in time that the vehicle passes the camera. Next slide. This is what I mentioned before, the offense type drop-down box. So when an officer signs into the system and he wants to look for a vehicle, he's got a criminal investigation for, we'll just pick one there, a burglary charge. So he's answered a call, house has been burglarized, and maybe a neighbor saw a certain vehicle that could be a suspect vehicle. For him to check for that vehicle, he has to go into the system, sign in, sign his waiver. On the drop-down box, he must check off that box that says burglary. And then he can put other information in there to search for a possible vehicle that may have passed one of the ALPR cameras in the area. But he must put that drop-down offense code in there before he gets anything. And all those drop-down boxes are all based on criminal offenses, which is controlled by NIBRs. So they're all not NIBRs reporting offenses that are in the drop-down boxes. Next slide. So we're very proud of how we have done the system with flock. Chief mentioned the data. All of the data that we have is owned 100% by your agency. We don't keep it, we don't sell it, we don't use it. It's all your data to be controlled and share with who you want to share with. Your agency decides what other agencies can see it, how many, how few, it's all up to you. But we do not keep your data. That data automatically is deleted in 30 days unless your agency is keeping the data for investigation. If they don't, it goes away in 30 days. Private customers, so we have HOAs that have our technology, there are certain stores that have our technology, department stores, home goods stores. That information that they have does not have, they don't have access to our government data or hot lists. It's just strictly for their own use for the businesses. I mentioned that the data deletes after 30 days. Again, we have to emphasize there is no facial recognition. We hear oftentimes that they're using facial facial recognition, we don't do it. Even if, for instance, if a person is walking in front of a vehicle or next to a vehicle, when that image is captured, the photograph of the back of the car, maybe there, you can see a person in that momentary shot, there's no recognition to that person, no facial recognition used. We can't search for that person by clothing type or anything else. So all the data that we do collect and hold for you for 30 days is encrypted in transit and at rest. It's all very well maintained in the AWS server. Everything is, FBI approved. They're the CGIS compliant, NDAA, SOC 2, which is independently audited controls covering security, availability, and confidentiality. ISO 27001, data security and privacy. ISO 42001, higher education community vendor assessment tool. So we're aligned with several security protocols. There is some misinformation that at one time we were breached. We've never been breached. Our data has never been breached or stolen or hacked. That was all misinformation. It's been proven that it never happened. We have very, very strict things in place to make sure it doesn't happen. There's being tested constantly by a third-party vendor that tests our system to make sure it can't be hacked or breached in any way. Next slide. This is the video for you.
We're not hearing the audio on the video. Phil, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, can you hear? They can't hear the audio. I can't hear you, Kristen, either.
Yeah, I apologize. I took it off mute, but it doesn't seem to be that they can hear it. We can try to start it over.
Try and start over if not. We
Yeah.
will fix it.
Share settings.
All right. Okay. Share entire desktop or advanced audio. Capture with window. Audio.
Do you have? Is there a share audio feature, Kristen?
Yep, they do have that clicked.
Try it again, and then we'll go past it.
Okay. And I can turn up the volume maybe if I'm not on mute. Okay, I'll try again.
No. Okay. That's all right. So that's Ashley. She's one of our engineers, and she would do a much better job explaining than I can because she's much smarter than I am. But I've explained most of what she talked about anyway, so let's go past her to the next slide, Kristen. Apologies. So Chief had mentioned to you about our transparency portal. We really recommend this for agencies that use our equipment because it allows anybody to go onto your website and get the information that they may want. Oftentimes people want to FOIA information about what is happening. This puts everything out there in the open. There's no need for a FOIA because they can go on your website and get the information that they're looking for. It is customizable for each agency. It displays the policies that the chief had mentioned earlier that they would put in place. Publishes their usage metrics. Lets people know that every search requires a registered ID, an offense type, all the things I described to you today. And it also lets them know that there is a permanent audit trail. So we talked about the data that is deleted in 30 days. Even after that data that is deleted in 30 days, there still will be an audit trail for what the officer ran, the license plate number that he ran, so that can be checked later on in an audit. So that never goes away. It's always there for the chief to use to do an audit if he has to go back and check to see if something was not done properly. And we do always encourage agencies to conduct regular audits to ensure proper usage. We also have a new tool, our automatic audit tool, that will look through the system sees the system itself, and it'll alert the chief or his administrator if there are some issues possibly mentioned as well. So those audit tools we have are really good tools that have proven that, you know, we want to be transparent. We know the police are going to be transparent, and we're sure you want them to be transparent. So by providing this tool, and we just upgraded the transparency portal about a week ago to make it even more robust and give more information to the public when they want to see it. Next slide. Okay, the myths and facts. You know, we talked about some of these already. The myth, ALPRs can track people, show police everywhere they go. We talked about that. I gave you an example of how that doesn't work. The ALPRs are taking a point-in-time image of the rear of the vehicle. They're taking a photograph of what is required to legally operate a vehicle on the roadway, the license plate. That's what the photograph is of. They don't continuously track vehicles. The images that are not used for investigation are deleted every 30 days. Whatever's gone on those cameras are gone unless your agency, your department, saves it because of an investigation. People talk about Fourth Amendment right violations. Over 40 courts now in the country have ruled that the technology and photographs that are taken with ALPR technology is not a violation of Fourth Amendment rights. It is a photograph taken on a public roadway. No violation of privacy. That's the next myth. Violation of the Fourth Amendment. Okay, next slide. We're really proud of Flock to be endorsed by these three agencies. NICMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We work with quite a bit. Last year alone, Flock technology helped return 10,000 missing people, not just children, but also adults, at-risk adults, children who have been abducted or just missing, wandered away, rental abductions. We are endorsed by the Oakland chapter of the NAACP, and also Mothers Against Drunk Driving is endorsed us. A lot of people who are driving impaired might have an accident and they're involved in hit and runs, they leave, and our technology really helps the police agency locate those hit and run vehicles that are often impaired. That's the end of our slideshow, is that right, Kristen? Yeah, that's the end. Any questions?
Hold on, Phil, hold that. Just a reminder for the residents in the audience, we're going to go to the select board first, and then we'll go to the audience members. You can ask questions of both Phil and Chief Zioli, and they'd be more than willing to answer any questions you might have. So with that, I'll go to Tiffany and Steve first, seeing as you guys are joining us from Zoom. Appreciate you guys coming out during your vacations. So whichever one of you wants to go first, by all means, start it off.
I only have one short thing here. If you want to take your questions, and then Mike, I'd like to have a longer statement to read after the residents.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, I actually just have a quick question as well. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the presentation, and I understand that Chief Zioli is trying to, obtain a new tool for the police department. And my concern right now is something that I'd like to learn a little bit more from. In doing my research on this program, I understand that there are communities that have adopted Flock as a resource and then did actually, stop utilizing that. And I'm just wondering, what can we learn from this? And a little bit of my concern is, are we giving ourselves enough time to learn from this, as there's so much happening in real time? And I utilize the town of Framingham as one example where the town did adopt the Flock system. They were they shared that it was a helpful resource, but then acknowledged that they decided that to pause the program because policy and public input should come first, and they were trying to, basically have more input from the community, in terms of its implementation. So I'm just curious about, in general, how, how this, in terms of community input and whatnot, how does that come into play with the flock system?
Yeah, so you're doing it right, because you're having this meeting before you put the system in place. Some places don't do that, they just get the system, put it in, but your board chief is doing his due diligence to get the support right now, and that's great, and we appreciate that. We're happy to work with the chief. And you're right, some towns have canceled their contract because of some public outcry. A lot of it, again, was from misinformation. Big towns, San Francisco, Oakland, California, Richmond, California, canceled their account. And I'm happy to say that they're all back to being flock customers because they saw such a high jump in their account rate after shutting those cameras off that they had to come back. And certainly this is up to the community, and we want you to do what you think is best for your community. We see it as a great tool for the police department. It's a great tool to solve crime, keep people safe. We really believe that everybody deserves to feel safe in their homes. That's why I feel so strongly about this stuff, because I know that how well it works. I've seen it firsthand. The crimes we were able to solve in my communities that I've worked for that utilize flock. So I know it's a great tool, and I'm happy that you are doing your due diligence to be transparent with your community, have this meeting before deploying the cameras. I think Chief and Deputy Chief did a great job working with Kristen to get the information together to provide to you. So, they're doing it the right way. So kudos to them, and kudos to the board.
Thank you, I'm good for right now.
Steve?
Thank you. Yeah, Phil and Kristen, great to see you again. I appreciate you guys taking the time to answer our questions here today, and Kristen, you, and Ms. Prada. I do the block presentations and competitors, characterizations by the company, and Phil, you mentioned it in your presentation there, is that
Steve, you keep freezing.
on the line, but only have so much control.
Okay, so Steve.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah, Steve, we didn't hear.
You back now?
We didn't hear anything you said.
All right. I'm trying to have the kids stop streaming on the Wi-Fi, but that's a losing battle. So I want to address something that Phil, you said in your. And I think it's a bit of a mischaracterization that flock doesn't track individuals going here, going there. And an individual camera, you're right, it doesn't. But
I think, Steve, what you're trying to say is you're questioning of whether the cameras actually track. Is that?
no, I was making a statement.
Okay,
Mike,
sorry.
this goes back to why I asked for a delay in this conversation.
Steve, could you try turning your video off and then restating what you were saying? Just so we can.
So I'll start over. Phil, you in your presentation, you state that these flock cameras do not track, a person going to the grocery store, going to the gym, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to point out, I think it's a bit of a mischaracterization that yes, you're right. An individual camera is a point in time. It's one place, going by that one camera. You're absolutely correct. But the very nature of
doesn't need to finish.
Can I finish his argument?
Everyone in
Anybody
there.
could. No one can.
Am I breaking up again?
Yes.
We hear you, dude, though. We know what you're saying.
It's incredibly frustrating.
Steve, would you like to call in on the phone instead of using the, I don't know if that would
Yeah,
help.
that might be helpful.
You want to try that?
Let me try that.
Okay.
You guys can continue the conversation while I switch over the call.
John, any questions?
Yeah. I guess I'll ask the chief this. I think it's one of the questions I asked when I was there. You talked about where they're going to be deployed. I noticed you didn't talk about that here. Is that because, is that like a operational thing? You don't want people to know where they are, or can we talk about that? I
We
didn't
can
want to.
talk about it. No,
Okay.
there's no, right now, we've got a tentative plan where we want to deploy these signs. They're gonna be at entrance and exit points of the community. We're recommending 6, so clearly that's not gonna cover every street in town. But one of the things we're holding off on is because we wanna make sure we leverage what other towns have, so that if another town has one in an area, we don't need to put it there, right? So we wanna get the best bang for our buck, but we have a basic idea we wanna put them, but we can't finalize it yet until we actually go and just confirm those areas, get eyes on that ground and make sure it's on public property. Yeah, but once that happens, we'll be more than happy to, provide that information and maybe put it on our transparency portal.
Okay, so people will know where they are?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
And the plan isn't to have 1,000 of these all around town?
6.
6. I just want people to know that isn't the intention, which I do have a lot of concerns about the tracking of individuals. Only having 6 here in Rockland, makes me feel a little bit better about it. But I also wonder how effective it's gonna be if you only have 6 cameras. So I wonder if you maybe speak to.
Well, like I
to
mentioned
that.
before, so with the fact that all the towns around us already have them, so we'll be able to kind of take advantage of that. So we'll have a little bit more coverage than just the 6, it'll make that 6 more. So, yeah, it's not gonna be complete, and, it is what it is, but I think what we'll be able to do is have something, and it's gonna help, I think, in the long run, because we'll have certain parts of the town covered, and the other parts of the town that we will be looking at other towns where they have their signs. So we're gonna do the best with what we got. I'm proposing 6, obviously there's a monetary factor involved, so I think that's an appropriate place to go.
Okay. You also spoke about the training and the monitoring that's going to go on. Can you talk to what would happen if you found out an officer was misusing the technology?
Yeah, so clearly any type of misuse, there'd be, I would take that very seriously, of course. All of our officers are governed by post standards and are disciplined. That's rules and regulations in our policies. So they'd be bound by any type of violation, would be considered a misconduct, and we'd have to talk about that. And, that would be in relation to our, collective bargaining agreements with our union members too. So we'd have to work in conjunction with that. But we would take that very seriously, and, it would be considered misconduct.
Okay, because in the proposed policy talks about that the potential of criminal prosecution. Could you maybe expand on how that might rise to where someone might get, arrested for misusing this?
Yeah, so clearly, you'd have to take it on a case-by-case basis, but clearly, the fact of the matter is our officers, if they're gonna misuse equipment, if they're gonna misuse technology, that's gonna be a serious violation of our policies and procedures. So if someone violates, then uses someone's identity and starts stalking somebody, and it rises to the level of some kind of criminal charge for stalking, so be it. That's how it's gonna roll. We're gonna treat this as a serious issue, and we're not gonna, we're gonna treat it seriously, and we're gonna take every step to maintain the integrity of the program.
Okay, I think that's it for now, I think.
Steve, do we have you back?
Yeah, hopefully this is a little bit better. So, what I was saying is, it's a point, Phil, that you made in the presentation. I've seen multiple places that a single camera, it doesn't track where you're going from the gym or the grocery store, et cetera. But with multiple cameras in multiple different places across multiple towns, I think it's fair to say it can establish a pattern. I mean, that's the very use case of this, right? We want to see if it's a vehicle we're looking for traveling, through Rockland into Abington into Braintree, so that the police can work with the Braintree police to try to apprehend a potential criminal. So to say that it doesn't, show a pattern of where someone goes, I think is a bit of a mischaracterization. That really only applies to a single camera at a point in time. But from the system as a whole, the whole intent of this system is to develop a pattern to identify where a criminal may go.
Yeah, for that to happen, Steve, an investigator would have to specifically look for that specific vehicle. So once you put that information in, and then you can see where the vehicle had been. But it isn't just generally saying where every vehicle has passed and camera goes. Unless there's a criminal investigation for them to look at and put that specific information in, you would not be able to see that.
Yeah, I think where I'm going with this is that, where we are in national politics, and it's almost a McCarthyism 2.0. Your CEO even referenced Antifa as a terrorist organization, like our president has. That anyone who may speak out against, a regime that seems hell-bent on targeting people, including politicians like Mike Kelly, Senator Mike Kelly, that could be used by those organizations. They could declare any one of us a criminal to be able to then track us. And I think that's part of the concern that a lot of people have, right? Is that you have people that play a bit free and loose. We have, ICE detaining American citizens and holding them for multiple days. And a lot of times, Border Patrol and ICE, have used the system. I understand that there are safeguards in place that departments can enable through the administrative console. And a lot of, I think, those cities and towns that have paused or stopped their use of law really is not understanding how to set up their system to prevent certain agencies from accessing their data. And I think Block's official statement on a lot of those cases is that, they set it up that way to allow for that data to be searched. It's creating, right? It creates a pattern in declaring anyone a criminal. If they have their license plate number, they can then establish that pattern. And so I think it's a bit of a mischaracterization.
So ICE has no access to our information. The information on your cameras is controlled completely 100% by your police department. They choose who they share with. They cannot share with ICE. And they have no way to get to our information. So that is just solely controlled by your department.
Right, and so and part of what my concern is too, that, I guess it's more of a question. Does Flock offer a kind of a guided setup for departments to ensure that they're selecting what they intend to make sure that they're, who they're sharing their data with is apparent?
Yes, we would definitely do that. It's an onboarding process, and they would definitely have the information available to them of how to turn those sharing capabilities on and off. They would go through all that step by step. Very important. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's apparent to me that a lot of the misunderstandings with a lot of different municipalities relates to them not setting it up the way that they thought they had.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I think that's changing now because of what's come out. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think that the more that the communities now see that this stuff wasn't supposed to go up, but it did because something wasn't clicked. I think every agency now is doing their due diligence to make sure that their settings are done properly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. I believe that this is an extremely important community conversation, and I commend you for driving it that way. I grew up in the DC area, MS-13 was a stone's throw away from my house. Before we moved up here, within the 2 years before we moved up here, there were 3 murders on my block. One of them was a friend of ours. They found out that he had safes, he had gun safes, he had money safes or whatever. Stabbed him 18 times. And there was 2 other people we kind of knew that died. When the school bus used to come outside and drop kids off from the high school outside of our house, I had to bring my toddlers down to the basement because I didn't know if there would be any gun activity that day. And I often had to bring first aid out to kids who had been beat up or maimed in some way. There had also been 5 cars stolen outside of our driveway, including mine. So from where I come from, I know viscerally how it is to live in a community like that. And that's one of the reasons we took the opportunity to move to Rockland, because it's really kind of wonder bread compared to living in that situation. So I do want to thank the chief. You know, some municipalities install this system or these systems without community input or discussion. And it's important to have because we have the freedom to collectively create the kind of community that we want. After reading the draft of your guidelines, I believe your intention to incorporate flock cameras into your police work to be sincere, right? And transparency is making sure that conversations about us are not without us, right? So the select board's responsibilities are litigation and driving policy as a voice for the people. We must always keep as a North Star what is best for the community. So we put agenda items on a warrant so residents can shape the type of community we want to have, right? The police responsibilities ensure public safety and trust building. I think you do a fabulous job. You've illustrated it several times. The coffee with the cop, most recently at the senior center, was really cool. Citizens patrols. And I've seen our police department act incredibly professionally during the Black Lives Matter marches, where they were called horrible names and without a reaction. And no kings, absolutely above board. And I would never suspect our current force of malfeasance of any sort with this system. That's not to say that in the future there might be someone on our police force that would try something like that. Oh, with all that said, this decision has kept me up at night for a couple of weeks now. I've been studying flock, and there's so many layers to this lasagna. No question, it streamlines the process of catching criminals. It's absolutely stunning in that regard. The question is who controls the info and who can access it? And, you know, Flock says that they don't share their information with ICE or Border Patrol, but ICE or Border Patrol has tapped in and gone through back doors to the police departments and local communities. Can you tell me, if they approached you, how would you react? Say they wanted information. What would that look like?
So, an answer to them would simply be, we don't get involved in any type of immigration enforcement, period. We would not be sharing any information with ICE. It's in our policy. It says it right there. Mm-hmm. I'd keep it short and sweet like that. We do partner with a lot of agencies, FBI, DEA, on other cases and things, and quite honestly, those agencies have helped us out and resolved a lot of issues in our town issues that we had the lack of resources to do. So I really appreciate and maintain those relationships with federal agencies. But for this particular issue, it's clearly not something we would be sharing any information with ICE or a federal agency with. This
So
data.
if they had a warrant, would that make a difference?
Well, a warrant from a judge? Okay, that'd be bound by any type of court order.
I just want
I'm not
to-
going to violate a court order because
Right.
obviously that's going to be.
Okay. I just wanted to make it,
Yeah, I thought you meant more
Clear.
voluntary
Okay.
type of thing.
so I think the fear is having a national deportation dragnet or following women that want to get an abortion in a state where it's legal, things of that nature. And many towns and cities around the country have canceled their flock contracts, and I'm wondering if you could speak to that. I actually spoke with the police chief in Salem, who recently canceled their contract. And he said that the control of the information wasn't entirely with them, and that's why they canceled it. So can you speak to that?
I really can't, because I don't know of any cases where the control is not with the agency. Our system is built, we're very proud that the system is built to give them complete and total control. It's control of the agency, we do not control it, so I'm not familiar with the Salem case or why they canceled, but I don't know why they didn't have control of their data. That's turned over from day one. We don't control that.
We also do have additional features that have been introduced because of these situations with reproductive and ICE, where we are able, well, your police department is able to turn on that any other department or themselves cannot do a search for these two features because of that. And that maybe have been not a feature when Salem did, so that could be the situation.
Yeah, I think he also told me that he tried to renegotiate the contract because there was something in the language that said that Flock could basically do whatever you want to with their information. So that's the reason he canceled. I don't know if you can speak to that. Like you use it for AI training and other things.
We can speak to that. We do have an MSA that will be looked at by your solicitor, who is actually looking at it right now. So when it comes to that information, all the metadata is turned off. So it, the time, things like that, it is to make the product better and to enhance it. And we can definitely get more information on that, but that is the only reason why anything. But it is stripped of any details. It's basically like if there's a new car that is coming into play, Flock is able to use that to enhance the product to help your police department to do their job efficiently.
And do you need our permission to use that information and that data?
That is something that it is part of the contract but like I said, it isn't actually your information. Everything is stripped from it. So there's no details.
Okay.
There's no details of where it came from, where it was at. It's only to try and get the tools to recognize there might be different license plates that came out. Every state has new license plates that come out to be able to identify those license plates. Things like that, but there's no metadata involved with that at all.
Okay. I understand, I read that Flock was considering partnering with Nexar, who is a dash cam company, where Flock technology would be in Uber and Lyft vehicles, school buses, delivery driver vans. Is that true?
I have not heard of anything about that. Again, I do,
Okay.
but I've heard nothing about us using any kind of technology like that. Other companies do use that. We do not.
Okay, and what about drone technology?
Yes, we do have drones. We use drones.
And I don't know, that seems like a slippery slope for me. Does the drone like follow people?
The drone is used to respond to scenes before the officer can get there. So, for instance, if there was a report of an active shooter at a school or a church, the drone would be able to deploy to get there first, let responding officers know. Fire departments use drones a lot to send a drone out to the scene to see whether or not they need all their apparatus to arrive. But usually it uses the force multiplier to give officers information as they're arriving to the scene.
And this technology is currently available if we so choose to use that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that would be something that your police department would have to, I mean, it's completely separate from the LPR program.
Yeah.
And would definitely have to go through
Yeah.
approvals and things like that. It's not just a part of what you guys are getting right now.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the LPR technology. It's a completely separate technology that's available.
Okay. There's legislation that's in the Ways and Means Committee in the state. It's House Bill 3755. That where the state is coming up with legislation for Flock technology or for ALPR technology specifically. It was reported favorably by the Transportation Committee, and then it's referred to the Ways and Means for further review. And it disallows using ALPR systems to track. The information can only be retained for 14 days or less. So I was going to ask you, Chief, can you explain to the public why you would need the information for 30 days?
So 30-day limit is kind of standard in that people go away for vacation, they maybe go away for a couple of weeks, and they come back and they find their house has been broken into. So they take a couple of days for them to report it. And then, a couple of days for us to do an investigation. So I'd hate to have to say to a victim, well, listen, we could have helped you if we had 30 days, but we reduced it to 20. 30 seems to be the standard amount across all the towns that use it. And so that's kind of where the 30 comes from.
Okay.
I can speak to that a little bit also, if you'd like.
Yep.
We have the same legislation here in Illinois that we're trying to do lessen a little bit. There have been several cases, and I was involved in one in particular here where we had a homicide. Actually, a man went in and killed his entire family, including his sisters and brothers, killed the dogs in the home, 7 people altogether. He then fled down to Texas and got involved in a firefight with officers there and took his own life. And everyone at that point thought that was the end of the case, that he had killed his family and now he took his own life, and it was the done deal. What we found out using the technology a couple weeks later was that he didn't go directly to Texas. He made another stop in one of the town that I was a chief in, actually picked somebody else up, using the technology and finding where they went, and combined with other tools too, cell phone technology. We found there was a second shooter in that homicide case, who now is in charge of homicide. We also found where he threw the gun into a river. We recovered the gun from the river. So, had it not been for those extra days of retention, we could not have gone back to prove that case, and that person would have literally got away with murder because the only other person that knew he was involved was deceased. So technology was very handy in that type of incident. As the chief mentioned, people are on vacation or they're gone for a while. Sometimes we don't even know that a crime has been committed for a couple of weeks. So having the information for the 30 days has been very helpful.
Okay. Now, there have been cases of misreads with the system, and one of the saddest ones was the man in Florida who it was a misread on his plate, saw a 7 as a 2 or a 2 as a 7, I can't remember, and the police tracked him down, drew their weapons, made him get on his stomach, and sicked a dog on him who mauled his arm up, and he's completely innocent because it was the wrong vehicle, and now he's going to have permanent nerve damage for the rest of his life. So, that happened. So,
Very unfortunate, very unfortunate. And again, this is not something that takes over for the police. This is a tool for police to use, but we always say that, police officers have to use this information and double check and confirm before they take any action. So this happened throughout my career where a plate would come back before we had this technology. We'd run a license plate and they would tell us, yeah, it's reported stolen. We'd stop the vehicle and found out that, yeah, it had been stolen one time, was recovered, and the original agency never removed it from the system, from NCIC. But that was our due diligence to make sure, to confirm. Same as this case now. This is a tool to use, and we encourage all the officers to use it. That you must confirm before you take any action that this is it's relevant.
and I asked you earlier, Chief, if you can have access to VIN numbers to match them to plate numbers. Is that part of the process?
Yeah. So it's right in our policy that officers are to confirm hits. Mm-hmm. So if in a typical situation, a car is reported stolen in the flock, we would take that information, run it through our MDT terminal in the cruiser. It would come back stolen. That's a confirmation, and we get all the information from there and proceed from there. So that's a classic example of something like that. Mm-hmm. But same thing with I think the stolen car is probably the best example of that.
Also, I'd like to add, we're very proud that the mystery we talked about, Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the information last week was that out of 1 million reads, we had 9 misreads out of 1 million. So, and we still continue to improve the technology.
And how many flock cameras exist in the United States right now? What are you up to?
I don't have the information. Kristen, do you know that, how many cameras we have? I know we serve over 7,000 communities across the country now.
Yeah, I know that it is 6,000 law enforcement communities and 6,000 private and public communities. I
So-
think about that number.
So the ACLU is estimating 120,000? Does that sound about right?
That does sound, I think, yeah, with
Okay.
129 sounds about right.
All right.
Yeah, throughout the 49 states.
Yep, okay. And something that still sits with me is that we are only being offered a flock option. And is there, I guess I should ask you, Chief, because you, and you, Deputy, looked into it, I suppose. Is there an interface, or is there a system that doesn't have a cloud interface?
You want to take a look?
That,
We've been studying these for approximately 2 years, so we
Uh-huh.
have looked into the four major brands. There's Axon Output, there's Recourse Scout, Motorola, Vigilant, and Flock. We looked through all of them and vetted it. It seems that the best camera in this area is the Flock system. And Phil may want to talk to that. And a lot of these have, Flock has a lot more guardrails than a lot of these. As like Motorola is all there, Axon, all theirs is live feed. We're not looking to do any live feed cameras here in Rockland. So when we look through a lot of these different cameras, we've vetted them already. We're not even trying to have live feed. Motorola is a lot more expensive than Flock. And it seems that pretty much all the police departments in Massachusetts, other than a couple, have gone with the Flock system.
okay.
So we have looked into multiple systems
Yeah.
over the last 2 years.
Well, I'm sure you've noticed Rockland's a little different. So, so we don't necessarily have to be like everybody else. I'm just bringing that up.
We don't talk bad about our competitors. What I can say, since you asked the question, is that Flock is the only system that offers the guardrails and the audit technology that is catching these officers when they misuse the system. That's why when you see, for the last couple of weeks, every officer has been accused of misusing the Flock, because we're the only ones that have the technology available to do those audits. And we're very proud of that.
Okay, well, I don't know, my question was, is there a system that doesn't have a cloud interface that keeps it local, you know, with smart cameras, that keeps it on a local server, where another town could call in and say, hey, did this plate go through Rockland, and you can confirm it on the phone? Is that doable too?
Not familiar with any of those. I'm sure they exist. I would venture that they're probably a lot more expensive. And then, you know, I'm not sure, you're still gonna have to use a software, some kind of software that you could potentially share with a neighboring agency. I'm sure that's not gonna be available to you. But I'm not familiar with any of those. We looked at some of the major ALPR cameras, but nothing closed system like you're talking about.
Okay. All right. And is it true that if a town meeting in the warrant, if the town votes not to approve the money for the following year for a Flock system, what would happen in that case?
Maybe I'll,
If you don't have the funds to pay for the contract, then the contract is not.
Okay.
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Everything we do is subject to appropriation.
Yeah. And, let's see, and, you know, another thing that sits with me, this is my last thing, I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but Flock was founded in 2017. By 2022, they were a $3.5 billion company. By 2025, they're a $7.5 billion company. And in 2026, they're roughly an $8.3 billion company. So we have all of this stuff happening in society with the Billionaire Boys Club and monopolies, and, you know, I don't know. Something, it sits with me weird about that. So that's all I want to say. I have a lot more, but I, you know. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know. How much time does everybody have? You have a few hours? Anyway, oh, yeah, can you, list, just for the public, the guardrails and why we have them and what they are? And this is
Sure.
like, it's for trust building purposes.
Yeah, so the guardrails we have in place are the audit tools, the both internal audit, external audit, auto audit tools we have. The ability for your agency to own all the data, that's all yours, not ours. We don't have anything to do with that. Also, that you have the ability to turn on and turn off who sees your data. You can, again, make sure that nobody can even inquire about any kind of immigration or if you know the right information on there. So all those have been put in place for your protection of the community.
And I'll just add that, I mean, obviously, with any type of program like this, there'll be training involved. There'll be presentations on the policy so they understand exactly what it means, what accountability is included in there, so they know exactly where they go. And let me just say this, listen, we have great officers at our department, okay? We have outstanding supervisors and I believe a very engaged leadership there. So we set the bar very high. Our officers always respond, they always respond to that bar. And so, they feel that they're very engaged, and so we have all that accountability with all the procedures and all the things we use. So this is, again, one example of that, but as well, what he's mentioned, I think we have a lot of guardrails in place.
Is there an urgency to put block cameras up?
Well, I think at this point, I mean, we have had some incidents in the town, we've had some crime, and with Rockland, it's not unique to Rockland, I mean, every town experiences it. However, I think the system being employed now will help us now. I mean, I hate to have something happen now, right? And we could have had the technology, but we didn't have it, and something happens. And it's almost like looking into a victim and saying, well, I'm sorry we didn't have the system in place, so therefore X, right? My job and my chair is to try to provide the best law enforcement, public safety services we can. From where I sit, this tool will help us in that endeavor, without a doubt, unequivocally. So, yes, I think it would be good to get this system up and running as soon as possible if we can.
Okay. So, I did a lot of studying about Fourth Amendment precedent, and where did I put it? In 1967, Katz versus U.S. in South Carolina, or the Supreme Court actually established that the Fourth Amendment protects people, not places, and when a person seeks to preserve something as private as his or her expectation of privacy, and is one that society is prepared to recognize as reasonable, government intrusion into that private sphere generally qualifies as a search and requires a warrant supported by probable cause when a search would violate a person's reasonable expectation of privacy. So that was established in 1967. I'm going to bump up to 2012 in the U.S. versus Jones. Justice Alito reasoned in a concurring opinion that using a GPS device to track a vehicle's movements over an extended period without a warrant intrudes on reasonable expectations of privacy because society's expectation is that the police will not secretly monitor and catalog every single movement of an individual's car for a very long period. And then Carpenter in 2018, Carpenter versus the U.S., the Supreme Court concluded that historical cell site location information enables law enforcement to reconstruct a person's past movements with such breadth and depth that accessing it constitutes a search, requires a warrant supported by probable cause, describing the cell phone pings, I guess, as an all-encompassing record of the holder's whereabouts and a deep repository of historical location information revealing an ultimate window into that person's life. So, does Flock have the capability of doing that?
So, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, 30 courts have ruled that our technology does not violate the Fourth Amendment.
Okay. So, in 2020, in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth versus McCarthy, the Supreme Judicial Court had thresholds with 4 factors. There's that constitutes surveillance, the policy of retaining info for a minimum of 1 year, the ability to record a plate number of nearly every passing vehicle, continuous 24-hour nature of surveillance, and recorded license plate numbers has to be linked to the location of the observation. And they stated that the time period in the first factor was long enough to trigger constitutional protections. So I'm wondering if 30 days is. Ultimately, they concluded that 4 ALPR cameras on public bridges, they were trying to catch a drug dealer in Bourne. They put flock cameras on the Bourne Bridge. And they said that since it was on a public space and that license plates were meant to be read because the letters are so big, and they were away from constitutionally sensitive locations, churches, homes, offices, grocery stores, and provided only limited surveillance, that it did not divulge the whole of the defendant's public movements. However, they noted that the defendant's constitutionally protected expectation of reasonable privacy could have been invaded by a more extensive use of the ALPR technology, like there are more cameras around. So on that note, I was reading in the Flock contract that ultimately Flock decides where the cameras are going to be placed? No?
No,
Okay.
that's
No?
not true.
Okay, so you guys work together with?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. And who would we be sharing it with? Would it be on a national basis, in your view, or
No.
just around?
No, it'd just be, at this point, with any type of program like this, obviously a slow rollout, we would most likely start off just sharing with the towns that surround us that have the program, and then after that, case-by-case basis. So if someone from Lowell has an issue, they'd reach out to us and say, listen, we had a case, can you help us with your flocks? We would probably do the search, provide the information to them as needed, just like we do with other towns when we reach out to them.
Okay.
Everything about law enforcement is sharing of information, because let's face it, I mean, I go to chief meetings every month and we talk about trends and patterns and what's going on. Our detectives go to association meetings and talk about, who's breaking into buildings in Plymouth and who's breaking into them in Medfield, wherever they're, so they can identify trends and patterns. So they share that information so that they can better do their job. Okay, that's the nature of law enforcement, really, is sharing.
Okay.
But no intention to share nationwide.
Yep. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. We appreciate that.
So most of everybody covered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask. Specifically, there's one question that wasn't mentioned, or one thing that wasn't pointed out. When conducting a search, did I see that it says a requirement of a case number having to exist?
That's exactly right.
So you can't just go on randomly and just start looking up license plates or looking at the camera information. There has to be a case number attached to that search.
Yeah, there's a box right there where you would
Yep.
put in the case number, and that case number is associated with a specific call that was generated in our CAD system. So there's always a link back to where that generated from.
Yep. So, I'll go back a little bit to the origin of this, and I was reached out to by a lot of residents based on an incident that happened in this town once back in, I think, April, and then again more recently, where we had, it is an ongoing investigation, so I'm going to be careful, but, drive-by shooting, and it became one of those things for me that I grew up in this town, I've lived here my entire life, I wouldn't tolerate, I don't think any of the residents in this town would tolerate living in a town where drive-by shootings exist. My first call after the second time it occurred was to Chief Zioli. And I asked Chief Zioli what the holdup was and what he would need from the select board. So that's when we started these conversations, what we could do to help assist them in fixing some of these issues and preventing it from happening. And through my research, I came across a site that showed what communities had flock cameras in them and we were glaringly one that didn't. And I think, you know, the criminals are aware of that. So, you know, I kept looking into it. I kept asking the chief for more information. I asked the chief to meet with each member of the select board individually and answer their questions and explain the technology, because there is a lot of misinformation that is out there. And I wanted to make sure that this meeting tonight is an opportunity for you in the audience to ask, you know, Chief Zioli, Deputy Summers, and the representatives from Flock some questions, right? So with that said, I'll open it up to members of the public. Just raise your hand, right? Come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and state your address, and feel free to ask the questions. Gentleman in the orange shirt, come on up.
Christopher,
Up to the podium.
I'm Christopher Burrell. I live at 411 Pond.
Just, you can.
All right, hopefully, yeah, I'm kind of new to the town. I've only lived here a couple of years. I guess my first question is, do you get a lot of drive-by shootings that are looking for towns that don't have flock cameras? I mean, they seem like, I would imagine, I don't know, I don't shoot a lot of people. But I imagine if I did, I'd want like a very specific reason. I'm not looking like, oh, Rockland, this is a, this is like a place to exploit.
So that's an example of a crime, but there's been other crimes. So
Well,
that's
I get that.
That's my point. I was making an example. I'm not saying that. It's
Okay, but
that,
I don't
you
think
know.
it's a good example. That's kind of my point. Is
It's
it
a
like a
relevant
drive-by
example.
shooting seems very personal. That doesn't. That's not like a Friday night. Hey, what are you doing? I'm bored. Let's go shoot like a Rockland because they don't have flock cameras. Like that. That to me doesn't justify mass surveillance. And I get that. Like, so questions. So questions. Yeah.
Can I just answer what you?
Yeah.
It seems like it. So let's not forget, when someone does something like that, they may be targeted, but let's not forget there's other neighbors around.
I get that.
Bullets go flying.
I get that.
So there's always people at danger, and not to mention the fact when someone comes into this town to do that type of act, you think they care about anybody else on the street? They probably don't.
No.
So I think that's an incredibly important situation that could be helpfully addressed by having a flock system.
I appreciate that, and I do, and I want to keep it to questions.
Yeah.
So, let's say you get a court order from Florida. Let's say Florida is like, hey, we think that this woman who has a sister in Massachusetts is going up there and getting an abortion, and you have a court order from a court in Florida saying, we'd like this information. You'd share that information with the court, right? You're not gonna not do that because it's a court order, right? It's a state court order, but still.
That's a pretty big what if there.
But it's not. These things are happening. These things are happening.
Okay.
Okay, let's do another one, right? Let's say my wife is a physician, right? And let's say Florida decides they want to start prosecuting people who are receiving gender-affirming care or whatever, right? And they're like, you know, and they realize, oh, you know, my wife's name somehow gets attached to a medical record. And they issue a warrant for her arrest or something like that. And I get that Massachusetts has said that like we're not gonna you know extradite people for that. But that's suddenly Disneyland or Disney World's off the boat for us. Like it just, I get bad things happen in society. Like that happens. I've lived in Portland, I've lived in London, I've lived in I lived in big cities. I've had drive-bys. Failing Street, Portland, Oregon. I had 2 of them happen in the course of a year. I get bad things happen, but the idea that that just I could get hit coming home on a drive. We're not going to ban alcohol sales because there's drunk drivers out there. Like this is such a bad idea. And I think I feel like the board knows this. Like anyone who votes for this, like put it up to a referendum on the case. You want to know what people think? Put it up to a referendum to the public. I bet you get over 80% that sit there and say no way. And I bet if someone wanted to run against someone here that voted for this, just put no to flock on their campaign signs, they'd win. Like this is such a bad idea, and it's so obvious the public. And I get you. There's undoubtedly many really good officers on the Rockland Police Department, and I have cops in my family. And because I have cops in my family, I also know that there's some subpar officers out there too. And you get officers that do weird things and take advantage of things like that. And it just seems like, and I got a question for Flock. When we do decide that we don't want to fund this anymore, and we want to what happens to the cameras? What, do you turn them off? Do you keep collecting that data? Do you keep collecting that information?
No, they get turned off and taken out.
All right, well, that's reassuring, but no, it's not. Like, honestly, the more you guys talk, the more I was like, this is a nightmare. And like, I think I think this is a terrible idea. And like, I appreciate what you gotta do, I do. I don't wanna tolerate crime. I love the fact that I moved from New Bedford. I moved because there were better, there's better schools, and even that, like, we don't have funding for arts, and like, my son can't even get a full year of like a Spanish class in the 8th grade. Like, but we moved here because it's a better town. We moved here because it's a nice community. Like, bad things happen, and it sucks when it does, right? It's a terrible thing when it does, but like, I don't know, I'm over this, like, you know, the terrorists are gonna get us, the gangs, no, like, I live in the real world, and the potential for abuse and the abuse we've seen in this country already, like, you wanna keep community relations going, and you wanna like foster that. No one in the public wants this. Like, I don't wanna say no one, but like, the public doesn't want this. It erodes that trust that you're trying to build. Anyways, that's it.
My husband is a hard act to follow. He is an incredible, speaker, and that is why I asked him to come. My name is Bonnie Burrell. I live at 411 Pond Street. Chief Zeoli, I've emailed you a few times. I've been very happy with the patrols that you do up there. People are noticeably slowing down up there, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
However, I would like to point out a few things. I believe it's section 4.1 in your contract. Take a look at it. We do not own that data at all. It says right there that Flock owns all the data irrevocably forever. We have no ownership of it whatsoever. 10.1, it states that Flock will decide where the cameras go with your input, but they will pick out where it goes. Look at your contract, or 10.2, I'm sorry. Take a look at it. I know you're shaking your head, Deputy, but your contract that you're proposing, this is what it's telling you. You talk about auditing internally. How about auditing externally? Looking at the man who, I think it was Florida, who put in, or Texas, looked for a woman who came up for an abortion, looked through 83,000 cameras for her, and tracked her up here. How about the men who stalked their exes from one state to another? How are you going to find out, oh, is that a real case number or not, when they put it in? Then you've got, how do you actually find a missing person if you're not taking photos of people and children? How do you say that you can find people who have disappeared because they've got dementia or an Amber Alert? How do you find them if you're not taking photos of people? Don't know that. How much unsolved crime do we actually have? Those shootings, we don't have Flock cameras right now, and so far it seems like you've solved it or know what is going on. You know, you're talking about adding on, but what are you taking away from your community? What are you taking away from people's individual rights? You talk about, that the 30 courts have ruled that you don't violate the Fourth Amendment. That's because Flock is a loophole, the third-party violation. If Rockland PD wanted to put in their own private system, it would violate the Constitution. Rockland PD can't own and put in their own little camera system to look out for us because it would violate the Constitution. So they're going to go around it and go through Flock. I don't know, how much is this going to cost the town? How much is it going to cost? And then, inevitably, when you get the people who are incredibly infuriated but don't know how to act civilly and take out the cameras, we're paying for them, not Flock. You want to replace the camera that keeps getting knocked down at the end of Pond Street? How much more money are we going to give out? We don't have enough money we cut half of our SPED program. What is important in this town? I moved from New Bedford. I had not a block away where it was gang territory. And I had no problem personally walking through there because I was not the target. I wasn't doing anything. But New Bedford just paused their Flock cameras. You had that Oakland NAACP was endorsing you, but Oakland took their program back. You're talking, and I don't know if they put it back in or not, but you're talking about a community that is 10 times, if not 100 times the size of Rockland. What are we willing to give up? And are you guys, I mean, you have a room full of Rockland citizens right now. And like my husband said, put it up to a referendum. Lori, you and I don't agree on a lot, but I think we agree on here, and we have real concerns, and there's no need to push this through and rush it through. Let the court cases go through. You know, we don't have to, if you look, Flock has a $5 million insurance policy, should something be like misread or whatever. But they will only pay out up to what we paid them for the last 12 months. Do we have more money for another lawsuit in our town? If you have not read every line in here and come out with serious concerns about our town, the financial health, the reputation, the constitutional rights of our citizens, if you have read it and you haven't come out with that, I don't think you should be in office, number one, and I don't think that you're being realistic, number two. That is my take on it. Thank you.
In the back. I will just remind everybody, this is a conversation that we're having. No decisions have been made. It's a conversation to hear what, if this were to be implemented, what you see as issues with the implementation, what you see issues with the contract, what you see as issues with the guidelines that they're looking to put into place. So just let's remember that it's a discussion, not an argument.
Hi, I'm Sarah McWilliams, and the people here don't trust Flock. It's pretty evident that nobody here wants this to happen. I'm just gonna go ahead. Some people would prefer the supposed safety over our right to privacy. Like she mentioned, how would we find people with dementia, like you mentioned, without facial recognition, if they just walked out?
So I'm referring instances where people have gotten behind the wheel. Sometimes an elder will take a car and then disappear and then get reported.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be our main focus with the Flock on a situation like that.
All right. To quote 404 Media, a website, a document they wrote specifically, 4 months during the summer of 2024, Jarmarius Brown, an Orange City, Florida police officer, ran his ex-girlfriend's license plate through the Flock automated license plate reader system lookup database at least 69 times. He searched for the license plate belonging to her mom at least 24 times and searched for the license plate belonging to her dad at least 15 times. Brown's searches were happening so often and were so commonplace that even one of his colleagues noticed Brown researching his ex-girlfriend's whereabouts, while law enforcement officers sat in their political cruisers, according to court records obtained by 404 Media. New Bedford recently as well, Officer Emily Pacheco was accused of stalking her ex-partner using Flock cameras to follow her car and see where it has been. I don't see this as a good idea. Not just that, the taxes that this would increase, like was mentioned, our schools don't have enough money. Our theater programs, our art programs, stuff for our students are not well paid. We have to make the money ourselves at the school, actually. This is a private company as well. It's been pretty well brought up how we probably shouldn't trust these people. Yeah, just saying. The majority here seems to be in agreement that we don't want this, and yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ava Pendleton. I live at 118 Division Street. And so I have two questions about privacy and concerns about surveillance of it. So I know you said multiple times that they are a license plate reader, but a camera is a camera. So how do you ensure that these cameras are not recording private property or buildings nearby that may be along a street?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So I know this is just, I'm curious about, I know you said that they're license plate readers, but a camera is a camera. So how do you ensure that they are not able to be misused to record private property or buildings near that are along a street with a flock camera or with the drones?
That's done during the installation. The cameras are at a certain height and a certain angle that'll catch the 2 lanes of traffic. That's what they're pointed at.
Okay. And
They don't move. They're statically mounted cameras.
okay. And now the drones, on that issue, the drones can move though. So, and why are the drones necessary? I know you said that the drones, like if there's a crash in law enforcement, like the drones can get there before law enforcement, but if the flock cameras are going to be able to see the street anyways, why would the drones be necessary?
We're not interested in getting drones.
Okay, so the drones wouldn't be involved with Rockland
It's
at all.
just the LPRs.
Okay. Okay, well, I was just curious on those few points. Thank you for clearing that up.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Mead and I live at 51 Maple Street in Rockland, Massachusetts. I just wanted to point out, first of all, to agree with majority of you who have either spoke or in the group, I think this is a horrible idea. I think that the fact that there are constant cameras just on, like one of my peers said, is just plain out weird, honestly. Just the fact that there's just cameras recording at any point in time. I'm aware that they're monitored, but as Mr. O'Donnell said, they are trying to point out patterns. And with recent stuff going on within the country and mostly outside of Massachusetts, but just because Massachusetts is the most educated state doesn't mean we don't have our faults, obviously. And it's catching patterns, and patterns include just anything that basically anyone behind that camera assumes to be like violent or faulty or anything like that. And honestly, we've all noticed probably maybe a big point in the town where there's kids going around causing trouble. Kids on maybe bikes specifically, from what I've heard from Facebook. And obviously, according to psychology, the visual dominance effect proves that what we see majority of is mostly what we think. And people just will think majority that kids are bad. And as you can see here, and from me and my peers standing up here, we're not all bad. We're all standing up here, obviously at our town, protesting something that we obviously care about. And to point out, you said that the flock cameras are used by AI, correct? That there's AI involved in the flock cameras? Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, okay.
That's how they differentiate different types of vehicles, different colors. But just to clarify one thing you said, the cameras are not constantly recording. It's not a video camera. They take a snapshot of the vehicle as it passes. They're not constantly recording.
Okay. Well, they have to obviously be constantly looking in order to catch that sort of thing. So, and as you said, the flock cameras involve AI, and according to the European Broadcasting Union and BBC News, 45% of AI is wrong. Like 45% of the time you look something up and you will get a wrong answer. And coming from someone who, I just graduated high school. I'm on my way to college in the next couple months. I've been around plenty of people who have used AI for projects, essays, school, and things. And I've been told by multiple of my peers that they have gotten a F on their essays or projects. Not only because they use AI, which obviously once you run it through a system that the school board has, it's going to come up as some sort of percentage of AI, but also because their information is wrong. Completely 100%, if not majority percent, wrong. And as one of my peers also said, to go off what she said, in late 2022, an occurrence happened in Kansas where a member of the Ketchie Police Department was arrested for using flock cameras to stalk his former ex-wife, who I'm gonna assume most likely did nothing wrong. She simply divorced him and he didn't like it. So, and also to go off what was mentioned earlier is that we are currently in a water drought, and data centers use plenty of water to form what you said AI usage is. Use it. And obviously we assume AI doesn't use that much water, or so we think, because one AI prompt uses up to 1 bottle of water. That's 1 bottle of water that I think all of us could use with the recent heat wave that has been going on. It has been hundreds of degrees outside. As someone who also works in a pool store, the pools are getting so hot that they're eating up all the chlorine that's inside and nobody can swim. I've had an abundance of people come in saying that their pool is just hot. It's hot outside, they can't swim, and they're miserable. Sorry, I got a little overwhelmed. But like large AI centers use millions of 5 million gallons per day, and that's enough water to obviously fix our water drought. So why are we using it to find criminal investigations, quote unquote, or see a funny picture of your dog as a human, or do your school projects, like use your brain. Yeah, so, like I said, I think this is a horrible idea. I think that if you want to leave it up to the police department, leave it up to them and their training to do their job, find these people themselves. And that obviously if you guys are trained well enough to be police officers, I think you should be well enough trained to find these people and find out what kind of criminal things are going on, rather than using AI or flock cameras to find these people. Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Josiah George, 813 Market Street. One of my favorite quotes, and I will paraphrase: we become occupied with an idea about whether we could, and we might not stop to think whether we should. I'd like to think that our police force looks out for us, that every endeavor that they look into to try to help this community will be just to serve that, to serve an end, to protect the community, to help and assist our neighboring communities. And if something has been looked into and researched and put forward, I think it's on everybody to do due diligence. And so I see that being done by board and by the community. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns with Flock in the community that it serves, or the communities that it serves. You're bringing up the rise of the company as a whole. We bring up AI. I would just hope that as it moves forward and the conversation moves forward, that our officers continue to do that due diligence. And I do encourage the reading of fine print, small print, get our town attorneys involved, make sure that if we go forward, we know what it is that we're getting into and know what it is that we can't get out of. Thank you.
Tricia Fallon, 10 Daniel Teague Drive. I just took a couple of notes while you guys were talking. The presentation kind of made light, but the audience did not, of the egregious abuses. You may not have a lot on your record, but they're really bad. So we need to take that into consideration. A lot of things you said made me pause, that the chief said they don't track people's speed. There's no facial recognition. And every time they said something like that, I thought, at this time, because you're opening the door, you're putting that foot in the door, and that's where it gets really scary. Massachusetts has no state laws on the books currently, Laurie talked about one in committee. Even if we passed laws, and I feel very lucky to be from Massachusetts, where I think we're pretty sane, that doesn't mean they can't be overridden by federal laws, because that takes precedence. That's really scary. A question about monitoring, because I know the data you said was held by 30 days, and you talked about internal monitoring. Who's doing that? Like, are we hiring a full-time person? Because that's a full-time job, to monitor all that data, right? So I don't know.
You mean like the audits?
Yeah, are you just adding that to the office's burden, or is that someone, is that a
So
new?
our detective sergeant, and it's in our policy, he'll be in charge of facilitating the program and conducting the audits. The policy that we have now is a draft policy, and one of the things when I walked in here today, and I told you my ears were gonna be open, I wanted to listen to concerns. A draft policy is just that, it's able to be changed. So one of the things we think about now is, instead of just having maybe one audit a year, maybe we bump that up to a couple a year and facilitate that and fall under one of our administrative lieutenants as well.
So it's not being consistently audited, like that, like?
It's a random type of thing.
So at least every 30 days, because that data supposedly disappears after 30 days, yes?
Oh, I think, okay, you're asking, am I checking to see if the data's deleted?
Or checking the data before it's gone, like if it's gone in 30 days. Am I misunderstanding that?
I can answer that. The auditable data, the name of the officer, the information that he input
Is kept forever because of audit purposes. The photographs are gone in 30 days.
So you're auditing just the data.
But the information the officer puts in are kept forever, so that they can be audited anytime.
Thank you. And the last thing I want to say is, I think I remember this. I don't think I'm going crazy. I thought it was not that long ago that we voted down license plate readers at town meeting. And somebody said that the flock cameras would be subject to appropriation. But are they going to be subject to approval at town meeting? Because there's a big difference. Subject to appropriation is a lot easier. Subject to approval, I was at town meeting, they voted down the license plate readers. I would like to see it come to town meeting for a full vote, not just the people who heard about tonight's meeting and were able to get here.
Let me try to answer your question if I can. The first thing is, I've been here for 7 years. I don't recall any town meeting vote on license plate readers. Was that within the last
I've been here a
7
lot
years?
longer. No.
So was this prior to 7 years ago there was a
I
town
honestly
meeting? Because
don't
I didn't think the
know.
tech,
If I may,
yeah.
Yes.
Under the last administration, it's probably over 10 to 15 years ago, it was not for license plate reader technology, it was for, up on Hingham Street by Home Depot, the police department was trying to put in red light detection, so, and it was going to ticket you if you ran the red light.
Okay,
It was not even what this was. It was, they were trying to put on those lights at Home Depot. When people ran red lights, they would get sent to ticket.
The premise is the same, though. The premise is the same, that it should go to town meeting, I believe, for approval, not just appropriation.
So, and can I just speak to that point as well? So the town meeting appropriates funds,
No.
right? So, and town meeting could authorize the board to do something, but policy issues like this aren't set at town meeting. So there could be a I'm giving you my personal opinion. You know, that there could be like a non-binding referendum. You could do that at the ballot. You could do that at town meeting. In my opinion, that's not binding. The select board has statutory authority on what we're able to do. We're, as the vendor noted, you know, we can only enter into any contract if we have available funding for that. But I just wanted to clarify that in my professional opinion, a town meeting vote is not required and cannot bind the select board in something like that.
Well, I guess I'm looking for more town input than.
Well, that's perfectly fine. I just was trying to answer that specifically.
All right, thank you.
Jane?
Hi everyone, my name is Jean Blaney. I'm the Recreation Director in town. I'm also a resident at 118 Turner Road here in Rockland. I'm going to make this brief and I'm going to talk from a municipality standpoint. As most of you know, I spend a majority of my time at Hartsuff Park. That's where our programs are. The chief and I have been talking about this type of technology for probably 8-10 years now. There's always something that happens at the park, whether it's the bikes and the kids. whether it's a car running over the fence, doing donuts in the field, running back over the fence, tearing up the parking lot. We unfortunately do not have, and these are just a couple of incidents that we've had, and I don't have the numbers with me tonight to tell you how much that actually cost all of you to repair all of that damage that happened to the park. I wish I did. But I can tell you from somebody that works in the town, it's disheartening to see, and I really wished there were technology that we could capture, and we had talked about license plate readers going in and out of the park. In several of these instances, I do have information as far as, make and model of the cars that did the damage to the parks. There was also an incident on Spring Street that I know Justin had talked about. So, from a municipality standpoint, I know you guys are all talking about other things other than what I'm talking about. However, I can tell you that I really wish I had the information so that I could hand it over to the police and say, is there any sort of retribution? I don't want to pay for somebody else damaging our parks, all of our municipal buildings. I don't want to pay for that. We pay for enough in this town. So I guess from a resident's point of view, I hear what you're all saying. I really didn't know too much about data, Phil, them talking about, you guys talking about them using the data for other purposes. So I appreciate all of your research that you guys have done, but from a municipality standpoint, from somebody that has, I take care of the community center, I help take care of all of the parks. So from that perspective, I can tell you that Chief and I have been talking about this for years, and it would have been great to actually have a little bit more information that I could have given him. So that's all I really came up here to say. Thanks.
Anyone else? In the back? Yep, no. Yes, you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jean Lucas, 813 Market Street. I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for all the work that you do in this community, and it's really appreciated. And I know for me personally, I have a lot more trust in our local folks than I necessarily do at larger levels and other places, and I think that's where a lot of the fear and concern comes in for people. So I just want to restate, so the camera, it only takes a still picture, and it's like motion sensor?
Yes, it captures the rear end of the vehicle as it passes.
And it's triggered by a motion sensor, or it's always taking pictures?
Kristen, can you answer that question?
Yeah.
It's motion.
Yeah, it's always taking pictures.
Okay. It's always yeah, always taking still pictures, but not video.
Yeah, still pictures.
Okay. And the camera doesn't have the capability to do more than that. It doesn't have the capability for video. But so is it taking pictures pretty often then to catch every car that goes by?
They don't know.
Yeah, so it must be taking still pictures pretty often in order to catch every car that goes by, every second or...
I'm not sure what the rate is, but I know it catches almost every vehicle that goes past it.
So it's not a video, but it's kind of maybe a slow motion video.
It's not video. Still life. It's how videos work.
Right. So it's it's like a low frame rate. Okay, I'm just trying to understand so we all know what we're talking about. Okay, cool. So my other question is, for me personally, I feel some degree of comfort at what these cameras do and don't do as of now, and as some others have said, feel some concern about what happens when that capability changes, what happens when there's updates to the system, what happen, because it's wonderful that we have this process to seek information and input from the community, and one thing I want to know is that would that happen at further stages of the process when somebody decides to go from 6 cameras to 30 cameras, or when the technology improves to where we are able to see more than just a license plate number, and is that something that the community is going to be brought into that information? And I'm not sure who I'm directing that question to.
So I would say I can't speak for future boards, right? You know, none of us may be here in the future, a couple years from now.
I might not be.
You know, so I don't want to bind another board in the future to follow an answer that I give today. All I can speak to is at this time, the only thing that's been brought to this board by the Rockland Police Department is a license plate reader. That is it. And that's the only thing that we're discussing at this time. And I agree. I mean, there's a lot of different technologies that go beyond that I wouldn't have an appetite to expand. But as a license plate reader, I tend to be thoughtful of it in a sense of how it helps law enforcement with that limited capability of it just being a license plate reader.
Okay. Can I also ask the question about funding? Is the funding all coming from the town? Are we getting, I know there's some towns that are getting federal funding, that's grants that are going towards this. What is the story here?
I know that the chief is going to apply for some grants. I don't believe he's secured any yet. Obviously, he wouldn't apply for anything until we got authorization to actually pursue this. But the intention would be to apply for grants as much as possible, like we do with everything else, for sure. But we haven't actually applied yet because we don't have authorization to do this. So I don't want to promise something that I can't guarantee.
And do we have a sense of what the initial budget outlay would be for the infrastructure and what the continual budget requirement would be?
I believe the proposed cost is $21,000 per year.
Per year, okay.
Correct.
And is there an additional cost for the installation of the devices, or is it just the
I believe
yearly contract?
it's a lump sum fee. That's the total cost.
The installation is waived on the first year because you get the insurance.
Yeah.
One of the things someone brought up before was like, if there's damage to the property, there's damage to the systems, will the town be on the hook for that? We'll be paying for the insurance, so that'll help if that does occur.
Okay. Is that included in that 21,000, or
It is.
that's an addition? Okay, great. It's really helpful. And then the question was asked if the contract were discontinued, if the town were to say we don't want this anymore. You said that the cameras somebody would actually come and take the cameras away, or they would just get turned off?
They would be turned off and taken away.
Okay. So we'd have a way to know that happened.
Yeah, they'd be gone.
Okay. I think that's, just one more question again, just clarification. So obviously we have in surrounding towns, and I guess we don't in Rockland, existing cameras. I'm thinking of like the ones on the Pike that keep track of licenses going by, that do tolls, that do speed checks. And I understand that these cameras don't do that. And I want to just kind of balance that security concern that like we do have these other cameras that are in the world and that are keeping track of where we go at certain times. So I just wanted to invite, if you had something to share about like how this balances out with that pre-existing system that we already deal with.
Not sure if I quite understand what
Are you asking if it's a similar technology?
I mean, I understand that it's a different technology, but I think for us, the residents, the consumers, as we're kind of weighing how much of a privacy concern we have and how much of a difference this makes compared to the infrastructure that already exists.
I mean,
Can we draw any comparisons?
One narrow thing I'll say is there is one major business in town that already uses Flock on their private property and their business, which probably everybody in this town has been to. So it already exists in town. We're talking about installing it on public roads for license plates. So I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Yeah, that's a helpful bit of information for sure. And I think to Jean's point, hi Jean, I'm Jean. To Jean's point about having that security for our public spaces and our parks, that does this do that? Are we talking about those as locations for these cameras?
No. No, these are gonna be on public roadways at the entrances and exits of the town.
Okay.
They'll be directed directly at the street, no, not at parks or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Just to point about the other camera systems, you can't walk into an apartment store, any place that you're not on camera. A bank, a convenience store, there's cameras all over that are actually capturing people, right? These air cameras that are on, in question tonight are taking photographs of the back of the vehicle and the license plate. Not the people who are driving who can't see inside the car, just the license plate and the back of the vehicle.
My name is Rick Snee. I live at 74 John Smith Lane. Before I ask my questions, I just want to highlight, we're not really talking about just a moment in time and one technology, right? We're looking at a threshold. The decisions we're making today will feed into how we make decisions tomorrow, which leads into my first question. As Flock updates this technology, as they update the technology that we buy today, and they add new features, say like an update comes out where Flock adds facial recognition and it is accessible to our camera systems, is that going to be an opt-in feature? Is it going to be opt-out? Are we going to have these kinds of discussions about that, like we had discussions about just the license plate readers that we already have strong feelings about?
So, Rick, like I said, I can't speak for future boards. I wanted to reach out tonight to hear the feedback from the residents, right, prior to any kind of decision. There's other communities that have entered into these agreements without talking to residents, right? So, so I'm sitting here from a position where, you know, we're trying to be as transparent with the community as possible with the discussions that have been ongoing, right? So that people will understand that it's coming out and it's a conversation that's been had. I've been approached by several residents that have been in favor of it, and I've been approached by many residents that are against it. So we're trying to take that information that we're giving, right? And if it's something that we're going to go forward with, is put the best guardrails in place based on the information that you guys offer, which is why I asked for the information, the contract, the draft contract, I will say, to be put out prior to, right? The guardrails prior to. I asked it to be put out on Monday so that people could have an opportunity to digest it and go through it and take a look and see if there's something that we may have missed, right? Because I think based on a lot of the information in there, we've covered a lot, but we need to hear feedback from residents to see if there's anything else that we didn't consider or that the police department didn't consider.
Can I also try to respond too, if that's all right? Again, you know, in other communities, the police department has just gone ahead and implemented this without any kind of process like we're having here. We have an excellent police chief who's committed to transparency and public input. I think I do a good job, and I similarly have been working with the chief to make sure that we do this publicly and make sure that the select board can decide on this kind of policy issue. So my opinion, as long as I'm here, is if the technology were to change in such a way where there was a really significant leap to something different, like you were talking about facial recognition or something other that presumably is some kind of opt-in, I would commit, and I'll say it publicly on tape right now, that to me is another policy decision that we would bring back to the board saying, do we want to go to the next level to whatever the latest technology is? As Mike said before, I can't commit that a future town administrator when I'm gone will be like that, or that a future board will want to go through this process, but they're all held accountable to all of you. You elect them, and they hire me, and they hire the police chief. So there is accountability that way. But that's, in my opinion, a good manager, a good administrator will want to make sure that these really important hot-button policy decisions are addressed publicly, in public by your elected officials. So that's the best way I can answer that.
Yeah. Is it possible in the agreement to consider language that would require updates that would change the nature of this technology to require an opt-in process by the town. So
You
that,
know what we could do though, Rick, we could also, if we decided to go forward with it, is we could create a bylaw, right, at town meeting. We could create a bylaw saying what this technology can and can't be used for, right? And in which case, that's in our charter, right? So that is a law going forward. If we want to say it can never be used for speeding, we can add that to the bylaw. We want to say it can't be used for people running red lights, add that to the bylaw. It can't be shared with, government agencies without a warrant, add that to the bylaw. If, it can't do facial recognition, keep adding. All these things can be added to a bylaw that can be put in our town charter. And our town charter is it. That's our governing policies.
so if we were to develop those bylaws, would those be drafted in place and voted on before we implement the system?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're going to implement the system or not. We're listening to public comment tonight, and we planning on having a vote. We may or may not, depending on how things go. I told the chief that we want to sit back and have a conversation with the residents, and a lot of the stuff that we're taking in right now, we're taking information and hearing what the concerns are. And I'm hearing a lot of concerns, and I am hearing some concerns that might be, misinformation, but I'm hearing some legitimate concerns that people are putting forward. And I think FLOC representatives, they can agree, and they've probably heard the same information. We're trying to, if we're going to implement this, we're going to implement this on the town of Rockland's terms, not on the terms of FLOC. It's going to be the town's terms, nobody else's.
But if the board votes to move forward today, what would that mean for those bylaws? Would the cameras be up before the town gets a chance to set parameters?
I don't know what the timing, what would the timing be on something like that? If for example, we voted today?
6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Implementation 6 to 8 weeks after signing.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told.
But then, in which case, at our next town meeting, we'd have the bylaws in place, and that would stop any future use of it for going forward. You know what I mean? We'd have a little bit of an opportunity, if that was the case, to see what the program does.
Should there be a special town meeting?
I don't know if it's the nature of it is listed as emergency.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, in order to do a special town meeting, it has to be emergency nature.
So the cameras could be up in 6 to 8 weeks, but there would be no meeting for the town to set bylaws until April.
Until April, or May, when
May.
town meeting is, yeah. But the guardrails would be in place, right? And in the guardrails, it says specifically that it's not being used for speeding or for red lights or for any of that stuff, right? And it shows specifically that you have to enter a case number in order to do a search.
Can I just make one other comment too? I just want to make clear that let's just give I'm not sure if this is where you're going, but let's just give a crazy hypothetical that the company just automatically implemented some upgrade to the system that we don't really want and we don't really have the ability to opt out or something. We will have the ability to terminate the contract without cause. It's within 30 days, just 30 days notice, we can opt out. So I want to make sure you understand that we're not binding ourselves to some long-term commitment, and if they change something, we're stuck with it. We can always opt out at any time.
With the assumption that the new functionality is something that the town does not want at the government level.
I'm just saying for any reason that the town can opt out of the contract for any reason.
So per the draft.
I'd like to say on behalf of FLOC too, we are not working on facial recognition.
We have no desire to have facial recognition. We're a business that's trying to make communities safe. We hear that they don't want facial recognition. It would not behoove the company to come up with something that people don't want. We have no intention of having facial recognition. These are, again, ALPR cameras that take a photo of the back of the car. There's not a face even in those photographs. We can't see inside the vehicle, so facial recognition wouldn't do any good for these cameras.
Right, but sometimes there's a difference between what your direct customers want and what the rest of us want. So I'll just leave it at that. So per the draft agreement, FLOC can disclose our data. FLOC, in this agreement, can disclose our data by court order, subpoena, or other valid processes. So my first question about that is, what are the other valid processes that would allow FLOC to release that data, and to whom?
It would only be by a court order.
if we were to get that there's no other way that I would see us giving information. We need to have a court order. That's your information.
Okay.
So with anything less than a court order directing us to release information to somebody, we can't do it.
Okay, because it was in your agreement that there could be other valid reasons, so I was just curious what those were. Is Flock required to notify the town of Rockland before disclosing that data? If you get a court order from someone up above us in the food chain?
I'm not an attorney, but I would say that unless that court order directed us not to notify you, other than that, we'd be notifying you.
Okay, because earlier we were talking about that the requests would come to RPD, but according to the agreement, you could get these requests directly?
If it was a court order, possibly. It does not happen, but if we had a court order, we have to, as the chief mentioned earlier, we have a court order, we don't have a choice. We have to give the information up.
So it's in the agreement just in case it happens, but you don't know why it would happen?
I don't know why that would happen. Usually whoever would look for that data would come directly to your police department.
So what happens if this...
For my notes, what, do you have the section number on that?
Yeah.
Sorry, you catch that. I said, do you have the section number handy on that? That line?
Yeah, he's looking at it, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I will check with the legal department and see, and get back with the chief and the council.
Yeah, I'll remind that. If there are no other reasons, no, that the phrase "other reasons" should probably be stricken from the contract. But it's in there.
But like we said, this is a draft contract. Yeah. It's a draft, and what we're here for is to edit this draft. So that's something we can strike from the contract.
But no, I think it's a good call-up by Rick there. It sounds like Flock doesn't have examples of what the other reasons may be.
So,
and part of this too, I think where we're all coming from is that, if we were to move forward with this, we would want most protections in place to protect our citizens, right? And, protect their civil liberty. And so there are things like this I think that are really helpful in this conversation that will allow us to really, tighten those screws to, what would make folks more comfortable. I know that will not make everyone comfortable with this technology, but to make folks more comfortable in finding that balance.
Yeah, so it's in section 5 under confidentiality. It's provision.
I'm sorry, Rick, you said section 5?
Section 5, provision D. So, Flock shall exercise reasonable care to hold confidential information in confidence and not use it or disclose it to any person or entity except, and skipping down to D, as required by law, including any court order, subpoena, or other valid legal process, provided that Flock shall, to the extent permissible, give the customer reasonable prior notice of such disclosure. So I just want to make sure that, well, one, I want to know, how does that disclosure happen? Does it happen before or after the information has been released? And what recourse does Rockland have if we determine that we can't or won't comply with that?
Yeah, we'll get with legal, I'll get back to the chief.
Because we already know there are examples where, because of the PROTECT Act, there's certain kinds of information we're not supposed to be disclosing if people ask related to reproductive health, immigration, and other reasons. So also per the draft agreement, it says that Flock can use our data to support and improve your products which someone else had asked for, your products and services. You mentioned making it, updating license plate reading, updating car makes, manufacturers. Is the data you're capturing only being used to improve the technology that Rockland is purchasing, or is it being used in general across Flock's product lines, including products that we are not opting into by choice?
It's being used to enhance the ALPR technology.
Well, that's a subset of
I'm sorry?
license plate readers.
Sorry. What is Flock's liability if a software glitch results in RPD actions that puts us at risk of a lawsuit or other penalties? So if Flock provides provides erroneous data in a criminal proceeding, does that put the town of Rockland at risk?
Again, that'd be a question for our legal team. I don't have the answer. I apologize.
But he's not answering questions.
Who? You know, he's for an executive session after a totally different case. He's not the attorney.
I know this, there's court and stuff, but like, we're not getting answers from these guys. You wanna implement this in 6 weeks? Like, no, I mean, I'm not saying like.
I'm not sure that anybody said it. That's the timeline.
I understand.
Listen,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's why we're having a conversation.
But you've been, saying stuff this whole time while other people are trying to ask questions.
I apologize.
And he's asking a question, who said that? And it's not the gentleman that's addressing him at the moment. So let's, you guys have all had an opportunity to talk. This is something that we don't usually do. I've always said that any item that's on an agenda, anybody can speak to. People don't show up to our meetings to speak to anything that's on the agenda. You guys are here, I'm allowing everybody to talk.
That's not true.
It generally is.
I would like you to talk to Mary Parsons then.
I've talked to Mary Parsons dozens of times.
There have been people here at other, and then I'll talk to you separate because
Yeah, I was
I
gonna say, I don't wanna
take
talk about other people that aren't in the room,
I
right?
don't,
But I have never told.
that you haven't acknowledged, but
I
I'm
have-
not gonna, here's the thing.
Okay.
I don't
all right. So,
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut,
that's
but
fine. That's a separate issue, but I've never told somebody they can't speak on an agenda item. That's it. It's an agenda item, and something that's not on the agenda is an open meeting law violation. If it's on the agenda and somebody raises their hand, and we have people in this room that are proof of that, right? That have come to our meetings and they've raised their hand and I've allowed them to speak, right? That's just the way it is. I don't know what to tell you. It's open meeting law. So, Rick, carry on, please.
My final question is, if the select board votes to move forward today, when do we get to review the new contract terms, or do we get to?
So, first, what I would say is I do appreciate the fact that you have asked questions based on what the contract is, right? I want to have the conversations based on facts and not feelings, right? Because facts is what's in front of us here, and we're talking about, this is a draft contract, right? What you've seen and what you propose that's different to it. What we'll end up doing is we'll go back and we'll have Chief Zioli meet with town council. Town council will put something forward again. Because you have bring-ups, what we'll do is we'll table a vote for tonight. We'll end up bringing this up on a future agenda, right? And we'll look at a contract that is potentially more feasible. And I'll have another meeting very similar to this one, right? Where we're going to talk about the contract that's in front of us. And we're going to continue to get the feedback from members of the community as we go forward with this. Obviously, it's a hot button topic, as we knew it was going to be. I reached out to you last week, to give you a heads up that it was going to be on this agenda and for you to invite people to it, so that we could hear the feedback from people, So it will be something that we end up tabling and moving forward, and looking at the different things and looking back at this tape and seeing what the feedback from the community was. And if it means more community outreach, then we'll do more community outreach. But, Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the contract, there's something that I had a question about within the contract. It's in Section 2, Access and Use. Under 2.2, Authorized End Users, which is something we really hadn't talked about yet tonight. And toward the middle of the paragraph, it says, customers shall be responsible for all acts and omissions of authorized end users in connection with their access and use of the Flock services, including each authorized end user's compliance with the terms of the agreement and applicable law. And the last sentence says, customer is responsible for any use of data, information, or services obtained through the Flock services by authorized end users. So my question to Flock is, what does responsible mean in this case? And are end users maybe information we share with Abington on one of their cases and say they don't have these guardrails in their town, and what happens to the information then?
Yeah, you are the end users. For us, that is your data.
Okay.
And the guardrails are always in place that you put in.
Okay.
So Laurie, talking from, my day job, I'm an IT professional, that type of language is kind of boilerplate for any software that's out there. That really the end users of a software are responsible for what they utilize that software for, the data that they house in that software. So I think if we were to say open up access to Abington, well, we made that decision to open up access to our data to Abington. So we are responsible for whatever Abington does with our data because we've allowed them to do such.
Okay.
Like I said,
But yeah, what that is a big, just the end user access. It's something that I spoke with the chief and Deputy Summers about, along with Officer Gallagher, that we do need to be very careful. And they have a very good plan for training and, limiting who has access to the system. At first, I don't want to speak for you guys entirely, but I did want to call out that, really taking a strong look at what type of access folks have, the administrator console, and enabling single sign-on is something that I shared my email with the board that I have with Flock related to single sign-on, the capabilities that are there, and I really stressed to the chief and Officer Gallagher the importance of enabling single sign-on so that if an officer were terminated, he would automatically, when they terminate him in our systems, would automatically remove access from Flock, which helps us adhere to those terms.
thank you. Thank you for bringing this to the board. Thank you for bringing this to us. I really appreciate that. We've seen it in other towns. It seems like you didn't have to. So thank you very much. I feel like this is a move that helps preserve trust in this town and the people who lead it. So, and thank you all. Thank you, Mike, especially for opening up the meeting like this.
Miss?
Sherry Valley, 411 Pond Street. I think there's been a lot of points that have been brought up, both in the big picture as well as to the contract. I have a few questions regarding this draft contract. Customer data is defined as including images, audio, and video. And in 4.1, it says customer, Rockland, hereby grants to Flock a limited, non-exclusive, royalty-free, irrevocable, perpetual, worldwide license to use and disclose customer data to provide the services and to use that data to support and improve Flock's products and services. Doesn't specifically say the LPR, so I think that's a problem. I would like to know if we implement this, are we going to opt out of the National Safety Lookup Tool, which utilizes this data? I would like to know if we are willing to work with someone like the ACLU to ensure best practices are involved with this. I would like to see a copy of that draft policy from the Rockland Police Department. That was not included in our package tonight. And I would like to see a final version of that before we even begin to think about implementing this. To Jean Blaney's point, I appreciate what you do for Rockland, and I understand that Hartsuff Park can be a challenge, but I think you can install a Ring camera without violating my constitutional rights, as a Flock camera would do. And finally, I know that Mr. Arnold has said that the Flock technology does not violate the Fourth Amendment, but there is nothing to prevent other users from using that technology to violate the Fourth Amendment. And we all are well aware that there are Flock problems across this country, and I think we need to rein back a little bit and wait and see how this plays out.
larger, I am still listening.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Hannah McWilliams. I live at 16 Everett Street. I just want to talk mainly about how much we already pay for the new Phelps School and adding even more money onto that for this. I don't think it's a good idea. Nobody right now is doing that well financially, and even if you are and you're lucky, no one wants to risk even a little bit of financial insecurity. So I just don't feel like right now is a great time to propose something so expensive or something to even add on to the taxes already created by the new Phelps School, which is amazing. I saw it. And at the Rockland High School, there is not enough funding. There were times when I would go to class and our teachers would be absent due to whatever reasonable reason, and we wouldn't have a substitute. There was nobody to fill in that role. We didn't have the resources to get a substitute. So the class was alone multiple times. There has been like 4 different Spanish teachers in the time I have been going to school. So we're already clearly not doing that great at school. So I just don't think adding even more money onto this and not funding other projects like the very underfunded art programs and other important programs, even scholarship funds, I just don't think right now is a good time at all for this. Yeah, that's it.
And I just wanted to speak to that. You know, we are capping our landfill for $0. And the monitoring fee that we would normally pay $60,000 a year for that is going to be paid for 30 years by the company capping the landfill. So, just saying. So,
I just want to make sure everybody understands, we're not proposing a tax increase to pay for this, and we're not proposing to cut the school budget to pay for this. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
In the back?
Hello. Hi. Hello, Rockland residents, the police, council people, and flock. My name is Rue Childs. I live at 234 North Avenue, and I have been a Rockland resident since I was born. I don't want to try speaking for everyone here, but I do just want to bring up that I think that we are feeling pretty paranoid about this whole situation. These kind of like new technologies are kind of being released all over America and other places, I'm assuming. And it feels really scary. I have been seeing and hearing a lot of people say that the current situation is more similar to fiction than reality. I've been seeing a lot of people draw comparisons to, like, not to be super fear-mongering, but 1984, WALL-E, Cyberpunk, Mad Max, and my personal entry to the list is Tank Girl. Shout out. It's a good movie. Not the kangaroo part, but you know. There have been previous situations that have caused a lot of like mistrust, I'll say, with the flock devices. Like a situation that went down in Arizona, where the Galveston Elementary School had flock cameras put up on their main street, and from further investigation, they realized that these cameras were pointing directly at the elementary school. And when they were having their town meeting, in the middle of it, the cameras were removed. I don't really, not much information is shared about the aftermath of that, but I'm just assuming that that main street either had moved their cameras or maybe they're just no longer present. I don't have much to add on to that other than the mistrust that has been garnered from it. There have also been reported sightings of cameras being disguised either behind or around the radar speed signs, which honestly, I don't want to say fair enough because I'm also really scared of these cameras because I'm a paranoid person, but to catch a license plate if someone's speeding, fair enough. This is scary, flat out. And I feel like we just want transparency into what's happening, but I'm personally not even sure what the transparency would even mean because I'm not that great at finding that information for myself, but I do trust any other speakers would be able to put it much more eloquently. Thank you.
As far as ALPR technology being new, it's actually been around for about 20 years. Tollways have been using it
For a long time, that's how they read the plates for toll violators and so on. Car washes use ALPR technology for some of their services, so although it may be new in town there, it has been around for quite some time. Flock is new to the business, only about 8 years, but thanks for your concerns. We appreciate you.
Okay, thank you, Flock.
Okay, so with that, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Clearly, there's a lot more work that needs to be done on this subject. I'm glad that we were able to introduce this subject to the residents and let them know that this is something that's been being talked about. There will be future meetings. This will show up on a future agenda, and we'll go from there. And we'll take the feedback that we got tonight, and we'll put together a different set of draft policies, and we'll share that with the public at the time when we have something final, to put forward. So, all right, with that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for.
All right, next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
I have none.
Okay, old business.
I have none.
Other old business not reasonably anticipated. Okay, town administrators report and correspondence.
Yep, I will keep this quick. I just have 4 quick items to update the board on. The first is, I want to let you know that I've hired engineering firms to do a wetlands delineation and boundary surveys at both the Jefferson School and the Eston School. I say the Jefferson School site because the Jefferson School has obviously been demolished. And the purpose of the survey and wetlands delineation there was a town meeting article to fund this in order to help the Parks Department plan for new ball fields. That's all part of the Phelps School and the demolition there. So we're making inroads to do the planning for new ball fields at the Jefferson School site. And at the Eston School, we're doing that because this is part of our long-range plan to potentially relocate the community center to the Eston School site. So the first step is to do some work understanding the boundaries and what land is available. Next, alluding to what Lori mentioned with our Pleasant Street landfill project. We had a very effective meeting the other day with the contractor that you selected and our Conservation Commission's wetlands consultant, just to understand the technical procedures on the different types of permitting that's going to be required through the Conservation Commission because there are wetlands abutting it. Very effective meeting. And we're still in discussions with the contractor on the development agreement contract. Once we work through that language with Town Council, we will present that to you for your ultimate approval. Third, I wanted to highlight that we had our monthly regular department head meeting with all department head staff, but this particular meeting, for the first time, we had our new school superintendent, Jane Hackett, our new assistant school superintendent, Dr. Jennifer Curtis Whipple, and the new school director of finance and operations, Katie Blake. So it was wonderful to have them at the meeting. They were very engaged, and I just want to publicly welcome them to the town. And then lastly, just a reminder, I'm going to be out of town from August 21 through August 31. Courtney will be available during that time, and I'll be back in time for your September 1st board meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you, Doug. Select Board comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Select Board and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Select Board Member O'Donnell.
Hi, thanks, Mike. First, I want to thank everyone, all the citizens that came out today to be involved with local government. As Mike mentioned it, we don't often get an audience participation at these meetings. I commend you all for the driven to come out today and participate. I truly appreciate it. I did have a longer statement prepared related to the flock discussion, though a lot of the concerns that I brought up were brought up by our constituents. There's some additional follow-up items I will talk to the chief about. I'm glad that we moved on from that topic without any action today, because there is still a lot to work on in my mind with the policy and the contract itself. But I appreciate the chief and Deputy Summers coming out today, spending their time educating us, educating the citizens for this initiative. Outside of that, I have none.
Thank you, Steve. Select Board Member Needham,
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
we got you.
Great. I want to thank everyone also who came out tonight, and I want to thank the chair for structuring the meeting as you did to allow for the input. My greatest concern, and I want to thank the chief and the department for bringing this to us, you know, as a prospective tool, and for all of us to have begun this discussion. My greatest concern coming in tonight was that I felt that it does need time for us to fully develop, you know, our next steps forward, whatever they may be, but we will do so together. And I do believe that, you know, with continued, you know, collaboration and we'll be able to come up with what's best for Rockland. So I just wanted to thank everybody for tonight.
Thank you, Tiffany. Select Board Member Elwood.
I'd like to thank the chief for coming tonight and taking time out of his schedule to meet with us all individually to help us understand everything that's going on. I'd like to thank everyone who came out today, especially our younger residents. I think it's incredibly important that that every generation, especially the younger generation, knows that if they want anything to change, they need to get involved. So I'm very heartened to see how many, you know, either high school or just graduated high school residents we have here today. It makes me feel good anytime we see that. And on a totally unrelated, lighthearted note, I'm just going to say for the record, I do not like Doug sitting over here. I want him back over there.
Over there, yeah.
It's very
It's very weird.
disconcerting. I think he should go back over there.
He looks weird over there. Yeah.
Yes. So.
I didn't want to have my back to the folks.
So this is just tonight, or
Well,
are you, because we had talked about
We did
this
talk
maybe,
about it.
and
We did talk about
I
it.
don't like it.
There won't be
So-
a podium there, though. So this was
Well,
just
maybe
constructed for
that's
tonight.
part of
Maybe
it,
it's the
but
podium.
I want him over there again.
Should we take a vote?
Yeah.
Can we?
No, we won't take a vote.
It's not on the agenda, so.
No, it's not on the agenda, so we can't. No votes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Vice Chair Childs.
Yeah, again, thank you, everybody, and a good point about the younger people being engaged, and Chief Zioli, Deputy Chief Summers, and Doug, and my board. This was, I was up nights, literally. This is total lack of sleep for 2.5 weeks, just researching and just trying to do the best I could for the town of Rockland. And, you know, I had to meditate before this meeting at home to just get grounded around it. And this I was foreseeing to be the most difficult select board meeting I'd ever attended, but it wasn't. And I really like everybody participating, and we are, I'm speaking for the board, I guess. We really appreciate the feedback. And, you know, we can bang out this can as how we want it moving forward. And I think it's, you know, speaks loudly to the trust building, you know, not only with us, but also with our Brazilian community, which is huge in Rockland as well. So, anyway. That's all I got.
Thank you, Lori. Yeah, I'll just reiterate what everybody else said. I just thank everybody for coming out. It was an important discussion to be had, and I just wanted to make sure that the residents felt like they were part of the discussion and will continue to be part of the discussion as we go forward with it. It has been something that we've been looking into, and there were definitely some areas that weren't answered for us that we wanted to reach out and hear from the residents and see what you guys thought. And obviously, there's more to it that we have to look at, and it'll be, like I said, it'll be on future agendas, and there will be no decisions made without coming back to a selectmen's meeting. So it will be on future agendas, and we'll go from there. So with that, entertain a motion to adjourn and enter into executive session. Meeting for the purpose of meeting with special town council pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM 449 Mass 444 2007 to discuss the pending litigation of Costa Brothers Masonry Inc. versus Bray Brothers Corporation et al. Versus Town of Rockland, Bristol Superior Court, CA number 2473CV00289B, and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of a general or special or federal grant in aid requirements, specifically the Public Records Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 726. Discuss privileged communication from special town council regarding litigation, not to reconvene.
So
Roll call
moved.
vote. Select Board Member Edom?
Yes.
Select Board Member O'Donnell?
Yes.
Select Board Member Elwood?
Yes.
Vice Chair Childs?
Yes.
And myself. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.